The chapel was a cavern of quiet. The only sounds were the sterile hum of the air conditioning and the ragged edge of my own breath. There were no murmured condolences, no rustling of formal clothes, no soft, shared crying, just the crushing, deafening weight of emptiness. Are you sure you want to wait any longer? The funeral home director, Mr. Albright, asked for the second time, his voice a low, practiced whisper of sympathy. His eyes, full of pity, flickered towards the 2 dozen completely empty rows of chairs. I didn't look at him. My gaze was locked on the heavy wooden doors at the back of the room. A stupid, stubborn part of me, the little boy who still believed in family, kept hoping the handle would turn, that my mother, my father, my brother, anyone would walk in, their faces etched with a grief that mirrored my own. Hi, I'm Ryan. I'm 33 years old. I whispered to the silence, the words tasting like ash, and the silence in that room was louder than any betrayal I'd ever experienced. It was the silence that finalized it, the last thread of hope. Frayed by years of their settled disapproval of Clara. She's too outspoken for you, Ryan. Are you sure about her background? Finally snapped. They hadn't just failed me. They had erased her. They had declared her, and the love of my life, unworthy of a final, basic human courtesy. Dotmer. Albright gave a slow, understanding nod and signaled to the pallbearers. The service for my Clara, the most vibrant soul to ever walk the earth, would be witnessed by an empty room. But as her casket was slowly carried forward, a cold, clear resolve solidified inside me, crystallizing from the shattered pieces of my heart. Their absence wasn't just an insult. It was their confession. It was the final piece of evidence I needed. I leaned over, my lips nearly touching the polished wood of her casket. They didn't come, my love, I breathed, my voice steady for the first time that day. Not a single one. But I promise you, they will hear about this. They will know what they did. A small, bitter smile touched my lips. They thought their silence was a judgment. They thought by not showing up, they were making a statement about her, about us. They were wrong. I was going to make sure they regretted it. Not with shouting, not with messy confrontations, but with a quiet, precise, and irrevocable action that would echo their own silence back at them forever. I would make them understand the cost of their absence, the inheritance, the family trust, the heirlooms. Everything they valued more than simple human decency would vanish from their lives as completely as they had from this chapel. Their empty chairs today would be answered by empty bank accounts tomorrow. Let the silence speak for them. My actions would speak for me, and for Clara. No one did. Not my mother, who had held my hand through broken bones and childhood heartbreaks, but couldn't bear to hold my hand through this. Not my 2 brothers, whose loyalty apparently ended where their discomfort began. Not my cousin who lived 15 minutes away, who had something come up. Not even my childhood best friend, Mark, who'd once sworn, with a beer in his hand and stars in his eyes, that he'd be my best man one day. He'd just texted, "Sorry, man, can't handle funerals." They all knew. The service had been planned for 3 weeks. I'd sent the details in a family group chat, my words careful and formal. I'd followed up with individual, pleading texts. It would mean everything to me if you were there. But still, I stood alone in that hollowed-out silence, the phantom weight of all their promised support crushing me. Well, almost alone. 3 of Clara's co-workers from the library came, their faces soft with a grief that felt purer than any family obligation. Mrs. Gable, our elderly neighbor from Furby who used to bring Clara homemade chicken soup when the chemo made everything else taste like metal, sat in the second row, a frail, steadfast sentinel. Javier, the brister from the Daily Grind, the cafe we used to go to every Saturday morning for coffee and crosswords, stood somberly at the back, still in his green apron. He'd closed the shop to come, and that was it. The priest's words were a gentle, distant hum. My family's empty chairs were a screaming void, but the quiet sniffle from Mrs. Gable, the firm, supportive nod from Javier, these were the anchors that kept me from dissolving entirely. They were her family. These people from the edges of her life had shown up for her, And in doing so, for me, they were the final, damning proof. Blood meant nothing. Love, the kind Claire irradiated and inspired, meant everything. As I walked out of the chapel, the first sharp spark of my plan ignited. They thought their absence was a quiet boycott. They were wrong. It was a declaration of war, and I would make sure they regretted it, not with a shout, but with a silence of my own that would speak volumes. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a persistent, angry vibration against my thigh. A final, cruel joke. I ignored it. After the shirt, hollow ceremony, after I had thanked Mrs. Gable and Javier with a voice thick with an emotion I couldn't name, I stood alone in the parking lot. The sky was a flat, indifferent gray. I finally pulled out my phone. 16 new messages. Family group chat. Me heart, foolishly, gave a single, painful throb of hope. Maybe apologies. Maybe explanations steeped in regret. I tapped the screen. It wasn't regret. It was a cascade of photos and videos. My niece, Lily, in a sparkly turquoise leotard, twirling at her dance recital. There she was, holding a trophy, beaming. My mother, my brothers, my cousin, all of them were there, smiling and clapping in the audience. The timestamp on the videos placed them right in the middle of Claire's funeral. The messages scrolled up, a monument to their collective delusion. Mom, isn't she just a star? My heart is so full. Brother Mark, so proud of my little girl. Nothing more important than family. Cousin, this is what life is all about. Celebrating our joys. And then, the message that made the world tilt on its axis. From my eldest brother, David, we knew Ryan would want us to be here for Lily. Clara's thing was just sad. It would have killed the vibe. Ryan will understand. He's strong. He always bounces back. He thought I'd understand. The phone screen blurred. The words bounces back echoed in the hollow space they had carved inside me. They had reduced the funeral of my wife, the mourning of my shattered life, to a vibe killer. They had chosen a child's dance recital as scheduled. Repeatable event over the one and only final farewell to the woman who was my entire world. I met Claire 7 years ago at a dusty second-hand bookstore. She was in the poetry aisle, muttering to herself about the criminal misplacement of a Sylvia Plath collection. She was the sunshine I never thought I deserved. Funny, awkward in the cutest way, and fiercely compassionate. She was a music teacher at the public school down the street. The kind of woman who cried during commercials about military homecomings and donated half her paycheck to a local animal shelter, even when it meant she'd be eating rice and beans for a week. She was the opposite of a vibe killer. She was the vibe. She was the joy, the music, the very heart of everything, and they had missed it. They had chosen to miss it, and in that moment, staring at their smiling faces in a brightly lit auditorium, I knew I wouldn't bounce back. I would break forward into a new shape, hard and sharp and relentless. A shape designed for one purpose only. To make them regret it. Last year, the axis of our world tilted. Claire was diagnosed with a rare, aggressive heart condition. One day, we were sprawled on the living room floor with travel brochures, planning our second honeymoon in Italy, laughing about learning to make pasta from a nonna in Tuscany. The next, we were in a sterile doctor's office, our new vocabulary filled with unpronounceable medical terms. Then later at home, measuring corners of our apartment to see where an oxygen tank could fit without her tripping over it. My family knew. I called my mother, my voice cracking, needing a mother's comfort. I texted my brothers updates, the news getting progressively worse. They knew how hard it was, but they never came to the hospital during the long, fear-soaked nights. Their calls never came with the question, how is she doing? Instead, the messages were subtle, then not so subtle. You have to stay positive, Ryan. Don't drag the rest of us down with your sad news. My grief was an inconvenience, a dark cloud threatening their perpetual sunshine. Clara passed away a quiet Tuesday morning as a soft rain pattered against the hospital window. Her hand was in mine, small and frail. She used the very last of her breath, a faint whisper that I had to lean in to catch. Keep playing our song, she said. And that was it. The universe, which had felt so bright and full with her in it, suddenly went dim. She was gone. In the devastating days that followed, I tried to give her the goodbye she truly deserved. I remembered a lazy Sunday afternoon years ago, where we talked about death and legacy and memories with a strange, comfortable lightness. She joked, "If you give me a boring funeral, I'll haunt you, Ryan. I want flowers, the big, dramatic, romantic ones. I want music, not that dreary organ stuff. Our music, and photos everywhere. I want people to remember me smiling." So, I did it all. I filled the chapel with sunflowers, her favorite. I compiled a playlist of all our songs, the cheesy 80s ballad from our first dance, the indie folk tune we sang on road trips, the jazz standard she'd play on the piano. I covered a board with photos of her laughing, her eyes crinkled at the corners, her smile wide and genuine. I tried to build a monument to her vibrant life, not her quiet end. And the cruelest irony was that the people who should have been there to see it, to remember her that way, to support me in building it, were at a dance recital. They had chosen to celebrate a routine performance while I was burying my entire reason for living. Their absence was the final, unforgivable note in the song of our love story, and I knew, with a chilling certainty, that the next song I played for them would be one of reckoning. But instead of support, I got a silence so profound it felt like a physical force. For 3 days, my phone was a tomb, the family chat a frozen monument to their dance recital joy. Then, on the 4th day, it finally rang. It was my mother. "Sweetheart," she began, her voice coated in that syrupy, placating tone she used for difficult subjects. "We need to talk about the other day. You know how hard funerals are on your brother, David? It brings up his anxiety. He just couldn't handle it." I stood there, clutching the phone, the silence on my end screaming everything I couldn't say. And then she delivered the killing blow, so casually it stole the air from my lungs. "Besides," she added, as if stating a simple, universal fact, "Ellie wasn't family. Ellie wasn't family." The words didn't just hurt. They eviscerated. They erased 7 years of marriage, a shared home, a shared life. They invalidated every "I love you," every whispered dream, every sacrifice made in sickness. She was my wife, the one who held my head when I was sick, who celebrated my promotions, who knew my deepest fears. She was my family, the only family that had truly mattered at the end. I didn't argue. I didn't scream. What was the point? You can't reason with a reality so warped. The click of me hanging up was a small, final sound, the period at the end of our sentence. But the worst part, the part that confirmed their absolute detachment from my reality, came 2 weeks later. A new text popped up in the same cursed group chat. It was from my cousin. "Hey everyone, BBQ at our place this Saturday. Burgers, beers, and good times. Ryan, you should come. Bring someone fun. We miss the old Ryan. Bring someone fun." As if Clara had been a hobby I'd outgrown. We miss the old Ryan, the Ryan who didn't have a dying wife, the Ryan who didn't bring sad news. They weren't inviting me, her grieving widower. They were summoning a ghost, a version of me that had died the same day she had, expecting him to show up with a six-pack and a smile. I stared at the message, a cold, clean clarity settling over me. Their world was a bubble of willful ignorance and curated joy, and they had just made it painfully clear there was no room for me in it anymore. Not as I was, not with my grief, and that was fine, because I was done trying to fit in. The plan that had been simmering in the quiet of my heart since the funeral now solidified. They wanted the old Ryan back. They were about to meet someone entirely new. The old Ryan, the one who smiled tightly at family dinners while his wife lay in a hospital bed, alone. The one who swallowed their dismissive comments like bitter pills to keep the peace. No, that man was buried with Clara. Then came the real betrayal. The one that proved their cruelty wasn't just neglect, but active erasure. An email from my oldest brother, David, the self-appointed executor of my parents' estate. The subject line was coldly practical, regarding the piano, Clara's piano, the beautiful, slightly out of tune upright we found at a flea market, the one we spent a weekend painstakingly refinishing, our hands stained with varnish, the one she taught me to play heart and soul on. our laughter echoing in our small apartment. It was the one item of hers I couldn't part with. It held the echo of her music. Our joy. David suggested selling it. He wrote that it was taking up valuable space in my depressing apartment, and the money could be put to better use. His final, soul-crushing line, "Let the past go, Ryan. You can always buy a new one." They thought grief had an expiration date. They thought love, a love like ours, was a piece of furniture that could be replaced with a newer model from a showroom. What they didn't know, what they never tried to know, was the new family I had been building from the shattered pieces they left behind. It was a family woven not from blood, but from threads of shared love for Clara. Her music students, the one she championed, began emailing me heartfelt letters. One shy girl, Meyer, even sent a recording of a song she'd composed in Clara's memory. The staff at the school created the Clara Harper Music Fund, already collecting instruments for children who couldn't afford them. Mrs. Gable, the soup-bringing neighbor, now came every Tuesday, not to talk, but to simply sit with me in a silence that was comforting, not condemning. And there was Jamal, the night nurse whose kindness had been a beacon in our darkest hours. He dragged me to a grief group at the library. There, people didn't flinch at my tears. They didn't offer platitudes. They just sat with me in the wreckage, holding space until I found the strength to breathe on my own. I started a journal. In it, I meticulously recorded every callous comment, every dismissive text. "Ellie wasn't family. Don't drag us down. Bring someone fun." It wasn't for revenge. It was for my sanity, to prove to myself I wasn't crazy, that the hurt was real. The tipping point came 4 months later. My mother appeared at my door, unannounced, with my cousin and a chirping real estate agent in tow. "We're here to look at the place," she announced brightly, as if staging an intervention. "You need a fresh start, Ryan. This apartment is just so depressing. Our home, the sacred space of our life together." I didn't yell. A profound calm settled over me. I walked to my bookshelf, pulled out the journal, and placed it in my cousin's hands. "Read this," I said, my voice steady. "The next time you wonder why I'm never at the Beaks." Then, I took the keys to my parents' lake house, a place I'd inherited, but never wanted, and pressed them into my mother's palm. "I don't need this, and I don't need you deciding what my healing should look like." I closed the door. The lock clicked into place. A final, gentle sound. 2 weeks later, on Clara's birthday, I didn't visit a cemetery. I went to her school. We held a celebration. Her students performed her favorite pieces. The principal unveiled a vibrant mural, a splash of color and music notes. A plaque beneath it read, "Ellie Harper, she taught us to listen, even when no one else did." Over 100 people stood there that day, their faces soft with memory and love. Not a single one shared my DNA, but every one of them shared my heart. I no longer eat dinner alone. I no longer cry in silence. I build a family from the ashes of their abandonment. They don't ask me to move on. They walk beside me as I carry my love for Clara forward. And they play our song. Every single week.